My name is Chris Bailey, and I'm the author of Intentional: How to Finish What You Start, and Hyperfocus.
Chapter 1: Intentionality and How It Shapes Our Goals.
There's a lot of productivity advice out there, but for every minute you spend reading about it, or listening to somebody talking about it, or watching some video about somebody talking about it, you have to make that time back and then some. And not all productivity advice falls into that category. A lot of it's just fluff. A lot of it's kind of, stuff that sounds good in theory, but doesn't really hold water in practice. And what I've found is that the best advice, it tends to come rather predictably from a few places. The first is the research. It's the academic literature about human performance, especially in the workplace. But there's also the experimental aspect. So I love using myself as almost a human guinea pig so that I can push on the limits of what I'm able to accomplish mentally and physically each and every day. So these experiments have spanned the gamut from working 90-hour weeks to watching 300 TED Talks in a week to meditating for 35 hours over the course of a week, all to push on these boundaries and get to the bottom of what's the secret to being productive. And since I can remember, I've always had the same answer, which is that being more productive is a process of becoming more intentional about how we spend our time, our attention, and our energy, which I see as the three ingredients of productivity. When it comes to the goals that we attain, intention matters more than any other factor in determining whether we'll attain our goals. There's that quote from Wayne Gretzky where we miss 100% of the shots we don't take, even though there's a 1 to 5% probability of us scoring. And intention is the same way, right? There's the saying that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. But yet, whenever we do find ourselves having achieved something that we set out to do, there was always an intention behind it. This is pictured beautifully, I think, in the intention stack. The different layers of intention that are in our life are almost stacked on top of one another. At the top here, you'll see our values, right? Which are these broader, deeper motivations that we have in our life. Values sit at the top of the intention stack for a big, big reason. They're the ultimate intentions that we're after in our life. Underneath that are the priorities that we have, right? Becoming healthier, make more money, whatever the priorities might look like. Then we have our goals, our traditional goals, which are these broader stories, narratives of change that we're driving forward in our life. Beneath our goals, you'll see our plans, right? The plans that make our goals a reality. And then finally, at the bottom, we have our present intentions. So, for example, maybe you have a goal of running a marathon, but that might lead to certain plans that you have further down the intention stack, which might be run this number of miles or kilometers this week. And then that might flow into the present intentions, the daily intentions that you have to go for a run after lunch today. But when you look up the intention stack, you'll see that the goal that you have to run a marathon, it can fit with your priorities and your values as well. So it might fit with the priority of becoming healthier, for example. It might fit with your broader value of accomplishment. And so this completes the full stack of what this goal means to you. It's not just about the goal. It's about what the plans are that the goal leads to and the daily actions that it will lead to as well. It's about the priorities that it fits with, the broader values that are in your life that it fits with too. And so we need all of these different layers of intentionality. A goal is not enough. We need our values. We need our daily actions as well. And in this way, a goal becomes the route that our daily actions can take to connect with who we are. So we don't always achieve our intentions. But when we do achieve something, there was intention behind it. And that's why intentionality is so critical to shape, right? It's a skill that we can get better at. We can incrementally improve our ability to shape our intentions, to deepen our intentions, to align them with the values that we have, to overcome the aversion that we have to doing them, to beat the procrastination that leads us to put them off. And best yet, over time, we can make them more aligned with our values and who we are. One of the things that surprised me about the nature of intentionality, going deep into the research on it, is that there's two types of intentions. So an intention at a fundamental level is just a plan that we will do something. When you think about it, we set plans both deliberately, thoughtfully, but we also set them just out of default on autopilot mode as well. So the default intentions that we have are embedded within us. There are habits, in other words. So, we're laying down in bed and our phone wakes us up, and so we bounce around between a stable of apps. There is a certain part of us that sets a plan to do the next thing, even though it's just a response to what happened before, to a certain set of conditions that came before. So the two types of intentions, default and deliberate. The more deliberate intentions that we set, the more we choose where to go. And we often also have these moments of awakening that happen in our day. So take the scenario where you're laying down in bed, you're swiping around between apps on your phone on default intention, driven forward by that habit energy. Eventually, there will come a point where it's like, okay, time to put the phone down. What do I want to do now? What do I actually want to get out of this day? Do I want to make myself an omelet and then read a book? Do I want to, get a coffee and then go to work? Do I want to, say hi to the kids? Whatever it might be, we set an intention when we snap out of that default mode and enter into that deliberate mode, and we choose where to go forward. This is why one of the most meaningful questions you can ask yourself is, what is the most meaningful thing I could be doing right now in this moment? We have all these different currencies that we try to optimize for in our lives without even realizing it. So we're at work and we're optimizing for accomplishment and productivity. We get home and we optimize for meaning, extracting more meaning out of the experiences that we have. And so intention is such that we often need to take one step back before we decide where we wish to move forward. And I think that's the key to keep in mind. If you're wanting to make more meaningful memories at home, take that step back and really consider, what is the most meaningful thing that I could be doing next after I'm done with this current thing? Should I pick up the phone and call a friend that I haven't connected with in a while? Should I just give my wife or husband a hug? Whatever it might look like. There are 1,000 potential futures that we could have at work, at home. Sometimes we have to just work within the autonomy that we do have, which is constrained often. But when we do have that ability to actually take charge and choose where we go, that is the time to root ourselves down and really decide thoughtfully, what do I want that will make me more productive or allow me to extract more meaning out of my next experience? So every intention has a different source, duration, strength, and depth. So first of all, we have the source. The beautiful thing about intentionality is our intentions come from a whole host of places. Some of them, this deep-rooted conditioning that we have, and others more deliberate. We have these default intentions that are embedded within us because of our biology, for example. So if you're on a road trip and you need to stop at a restroom, you set an intention to make a pit stop the next chance you get. The social environments we're a part of, we catch the social conditioning that other people have. If we join a new company and people there, don't love going to the bar after work like they did at the previous company, that will inform the intentions that we have. We'll set fewer intentions in that direction, maybe become a bit healthier as a result. So we get intentions from our biology, the social environments we occupy, we also get intentions from all the lessons we've learned. And so maybe we interact with the world in a certain way, and that teaches us a lesson for how we should behave. And then we learn to do things differently the next time, to not, pick up and eat apples off of the grocery store shelf as a child. I now know that as an adult. But we get this conditioning from our biology, from lessons we've learned, from the conditioning in our past. But there's also the deeper sources of intentionality that we can have as well, like our self-reflective capacity. So every intention has a different duration. So we can have a tiny intention to tie our shoelaces before we go for a run, which could be a part of an even greater intention that takes place over a longer period of time to run a marathon in a certain amount of time, which could be a part of a broader priority in our life to become healthier, which could be a part of a value that could be even broader than that, like feeling secure in our body. Personal security is a fundamental human value. So we have the source, we have the duration, but we also need the strength of an intention as well, which is a function of how much we desire doing the intention minus the aversion that we have to doing the intention. So sometimes our desire will far outnumber our aversion, and so we'll be motivated, we'll be fired up to do it, but of course that changes over the timeline of goal attainment, and so we need to account for aversion in overcoming procrastination. And the final attribute of our intentions is their depth. Every intention that we have is connected to a different extent to the values that we hold most dear. So my two biggest values happen to be self-direction and pleasure. I love going my own way. I love sense pleasure, delicious meals, baths, you name it. And so anything that is aligned with that feels deep and motivating to me. Making the gym like a spa is very motivating to me, as is finding an enjoyable, sustainable way of eating. Very enjoyable to me. But other intentions like, increase cardiovascular fitness after surgery I had a few years ago. I'm okay, don't worry. That requires more motivational energy. There's more aversion embedded within that because it's tougher for me to align that with the deeper goals that I have, though it is possible to edit them closer in that direction. So every single intention that you have will have a different depth as well. If somebody took just one idea from intentional, it's to really become more deliberate about the intentions you set across multiple layers of that intention stack. And so one of my favorite ways of doing this is called the rule of 3, where essentially we think at the start of the day, what 3 things will I want to have accomplished by the time the day is done? That's it. You only have to choose 3. And if you love the rule every day, you might want to do it every week too. So every week, every Sunday perhaps, you think, what are the 3 main things I'll want to have accomplished by the time the week is done? So then you can look to your daily intentions when you set them, and you can look to your weekly ones and think, how are these going to flow into one another? How can what I bite off every day contribute to this broader change that I'm trying to make to my life? And when you set those weekly intentions, you can look to your goal inventory, all the goals that you want to achieve over a medium, a long time span. And you can see how they align with the goals. Every time you set the weekly ones, you can bite off a bit of that goal that you can bring down to earth on that daily level. And then when you have the review of the inventory, you can look to your values so you can shape them around the kind of person that you are and take advantage of that natural motivating force inside of you called your values. And so it's in this way that on a practical, tactical basis each and every day, our different levels of intentionality in our life can flow into one another.
Chapter 2. Why values are essential to goal attainment.
So often when we don't follow through with a goal, It's because the goal is misaligned with something called our values. And I know what you're thinking. Whenever I hear the term values myself, whenever I have heard it, my eyes have kind of glazed over a little bit because there's a lot of advice out there about values, how we should connect with our values, embrace our values, that isn't rooted in science. What comes to mind for me is these cheesy corporate exercises where somebody will come in and they'll give you a list of 100 different values, and you're supposed to circle the one that you find most in. I just want to circle the whole page. Everything on there I like. I love humor. I love grace. I love this. I love that. But the research shows there are 12 fundamental human values that we all share. Every single one of us has these, but in different amounts. And full credit, where credit is due with these values, to Professor Shalom Schwartz, who pioneered the theory of fundamental human values in 1992. So, the thing to know about our values is our values are our motivational core. They are at the core of everything that we want to do and everything we don't want to do. On a very, very basic level, we're either compelled to enrich other people or ourselves. That's the first kind of polarity that we have. And the second polarity that we have is we either want to conserve things as they are, or we want to improve or change things as they are. So we have that basic polarity at the heart of us. We all point in a slightly different direction between those. And that creates our values. So our 12 values that we all share in different amounts, they blossom out of this fundamental orientation that we have. The first value is self-direction, which is going our own way. It's thinking our own thoughts. Stimulation, which is novelty, it's excitement. Then we have pleasure. Could be everything from eating a delicious burrito to taking a relaxing bath. Achievement, right? Accomplishing things that you're proud of. Next up is power, which is having dominance over resources and also other people. And curiously, out of all the different values, this one is the lowest, both cross-culturally as well as generally. And there is a certain need for it, though, too. Every congregation has a priest, for an example. Every city has a mayor. So there is this intrinsic structural need for it. Face is the next value, which is avoiding humiliation while preserving how you come across to other people. Next up is security. And this includes both personal security, but also societal security. Tradition. This is loving the norms and customs of the groups that we're a member of. Conformity. That's abiding by the expectations that other people have of us. Humility. It is recognizing your own significance, or some might say insignificance, in the grand systems that we're a part of. Universalism, which is protecting the welfare of people and of nature. And finally, benevolence, which is kindness. It's serving others. We all have some of these values in spades and others in very, very low amounts. And knowing which ones are strongest for you uniquely is one of the most helpful, if not the most helpful thing that you can know in goal attainment. So when you look at this list of values, you'll probably find that some of them jump out to you. It's like, oh, that is me. That describes me to a T. I am benevolent through and through, or I am self-directed through and through, or pleasure is what I'm after in my life, whatever it might look like. And then you probably have others that are, ugh, I don't want that in my, I don't need, for me, I have that reaction to conformity and to power. I don't want to have power over any other person ever. I find it awkward. So you can probably identify the top two that you have at this point. For me, again, it's self-direction and pleasure. Maybe it's benevolence and tradition for you, whatever it might look like. Try to base your goals around those values. Edit your goals so they fit with them. There is that next level that you can take. There are a lot of scientifically validated values tests because there simply is so much research around this theory of fundamental human values. I partnered with Professor Schwartz to create one and distribute it to readers of my book. But you don't have to take that. You don't need to pay a dime for this stuff because you probably have a lot of intuitive responses within you in that self-reflective capacity that you have that tell you which ones are strongest for you. So our values shape the intentions we set without even realizing it. So if you find that when you have a bit of downtime, for example, you find yourself gravitating to doing certain things, to serving others through your value of benevolence, to reading a book because of your value of self-direction, whatever it might look like, you'll find that your default intentions are already shaped by your values, right? They work hand in hand with one another. But when it comes to setting deliberate intentions, you'll find that what you gravitate to will be in line with the things you value. You'll want to double down on the values that you already have. And in my view, there are no good or bad or right or wrong values. There definitely are certain values that are more conducive to certain goals and to certain situations. And so when a goal is something that we are struggling to achieve, it can often be because it's misaligned to the values that we have. So if you value self-direction, which is going your own way, but a goal on your list feels like you're conforming to somebody else's expectation, you're probably going to rebel against that goal. You're not going to want to do it. There's going to be some part of you that feels deep inside of you that's like, no, get this goal out of my face. And it's because we have this visceral reaction when something isn't aligned with the things that we value. So let's say you have a goal on your list like write employee handbook for the next calendar year. That might actually be a goal that feels like something you have to conform to. It fits with that value of conformity. You're not going to want to do that goal. But let's say you value benevolence, kindness, right? You can reframe that goal around benevolence. So instead of write employee handbook, it could say mentor new employees and welcome new employees through the handbook update. So it's a simple reframe. It might be the same set of actions that you take to accomplish both goals, right? They might look the same from the outside looking in, but to you, they're completely different because one is aligned to what you actually care about. The other just feels like something you have to do. And so really, when a goal sticks, it's because we found a part of it that we can deeply and fundamentally connect with. And when a goal hasn't stuck, when it's just kind of something that we've been struggling to achieve for a while, that can be a sign that we need to edit the goal so that it's more in line with who we are. Maybe we need to see it from a different direction. Maybe we need to experiment with it a little bit to approach it from a different way. Instead of trying to will ourselves into some change, lose that body fat, Christopher. It can be more, how do I enjoy this process more for myself? How do I make it more pleasurable? And how can I be kinder to myself in this process too? They all look like the same thing. That's just embracing who you are and what you value.
Chapter 3: How to follow through on goals.
So if intentionality is the key to finishing what we start, goals are how we get there. A goal is a story of change that we're trying to make to our life. But what a goal is, at its core, is a prediction. A goal is a prediction of where we believe our current and our planned actions will take us. And I don't know if you've ever tried predicting the future before, but if you have, you've probably realized just how bad we are at predicting the future. We don't know what's around the corner in the world or even in our own lives sometimes. We overestimate how many resources we'll have for a goal, how much time we'll have for a goal. Right? Think about all the New Year's resolutions that we set. And then reality sinks in. So a goal is really a prediction, which often turns into an expectation of what will end up happening in our life, which turns into disappointment when it turns out that we can't predict the future, which turns into yet another goal that we set. And so goals are really these stories of change that we're trying to create. But when we're not careful, they can set us up to feel disappointment when we don't predict the future that we're planning for. We get so much wrong about goals. And I think a lot of the heuristics that we use to set goals are just these ideas that have circulated for a long time that we don't even know where they came from originally anymore. So SMART goals come to mind for this, where a SMART goal, there's a lot of advice out there about SMART goals, that we should set goals that are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. The words mean something different depending on who you ask, actually. But the research shows that they don't work. They don't actually work. Specific goals often aren't more helpful when we're in the learning stage of a goal. And there's redundancy in this criteria as well. So aren't measurable goals also realistic and kind of attainable too? So there's redundancy in the criteria. There's criteria that doesn't actually matter. And the research shows that there's actually a big amount of quote unquote research waste that has been conducted around SMART goals. What does work is becoming more intentional across every level of our life, from what we do today that allows us to act toward a goal, that to what we plan this week that allows us to act toward a goal, to the goal itself, to whether that goal is connected with what we value at our deep and fundamental level. So there are 4 steps to goal attainment. Shape a goal into something that you want to do, then act on the goal, then edit the goal. And then the final step is to maintain the goal. So when it comes to shaping a goal, we need to get 2 big things right. We need to get the outcome that we're after and the process that will get us to that outcome. So, for example, learning a new song on the piano, right? The outcome for that is to learn the new song on the piano. That's the goal. But the process that it takes us to get there is very different than that outcome. It might be do this new song for 20 minutes every day this week. So we need both when it comes to a goal, the process and the outcome. And we need to set intentions across multiple levels of our life. We can't just set these broad goals. We need to think, okay, how am I going to work toward them this week and today and this moment? There's a great quote that I love from Annie Dillard that kind of relates to this, where she wrote that how we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. And the exact same thing is true with regard to our goals. We need to think about the day-to-day with the goals that we set. So many of our goals are sepia-toned fantasies that sound incredible on the surface. One that really comes to mind for me is waking up early. Now, I love the idea of waking up early, of being this incredible early riser to, wake up at 5 and read the paper and meditate and answer email, do all these things. But whenever I integrate this habit into my life, which I love the idea of, I realize just how much I absolutely hate this ritual. I have to go to bed when friends want to hang out. I have to do all these things in the morning when I have no energy. I'm a night owl at heart. That's when I thrive personally. And it just goes to show that so often the idea of a goal is far more attractive than what the goal actually looks like in our life on a daily basis. And so mind if any of your goals are sepia-toned, because how we spend our days is how we spend our lives. I remember when I was first starting with looking at process versus outcome goals, and I was really, really against the idea of setting outcome goals. I'm not that accomplishment driven in my life. Accomplishments never really inspire me. I've never been inspired to do these big, audacious things, but I've always loved the process of doing them. So, writing a book, for example, I love the process of writing a book. I never think about what it might look like in, in the world, maybe for better or for worse. I'm not sure. I'll have to ask my publisher. But what I've realized, though, is outcome goals and process goals, if you're against them, they're both two sides of the same coin, where we need that broader story of change, which is the outcome that we're trying to achieve in our life. But we also need the process that'll get us there. So there is a reflection that needs to happen, where if you make a list of goals, maybe under each of those goals, have the outcome that you're trying to achieve and the process that will get you there. Because remember, goals are just a prediction, right? They're a prediction of where you believe your current and your planned actions will take you. And sometimes your process goals will work. Sometimes they won't. Sometimes something that you thought would work incredibly well won't work at all. So I remember when I was learning the piano, I downloaded all these apps because I'm kind of a tech nerd at heart. And I would download the apps and hook the piano up into the iPad, and it would tell me which keys to play and when. But I found that that habit kind of fell by the wayside until I hired a piano teacher, which added that layer of accountability into the goal. And so sometimes we need to try a lot of process goals out to find the one that actually sticks and allows us to make more progress to the outcomes that we have. Next up, act on the goal. So something that you'll find when you take a chance to capture all the goals that you're in the middle of is some of them will attract you. Some you'll feel just compelled to work on naturally. You'll be inspired, motivated to do them. And then you'll have others where you're looking at it and you just have this aversion to it, this aversive reaction where a goal just feels ugly. The things that you have to do, even though they might prove worthwhile at the end of the day, are not enjoyable in the slightest, right? So sometimes the process of doing something will induce aversion. And every goal has a different balance of desire and aversion. The interesting thing about desire and aversion is they fluctuate incredibly over the span of a goal. Like maybe you want to learn Spanish because you're going to Spain. And right after you book the tickets, even though it's 6 months away, you're fired up to go on this trip. And so you're learning, you're practicing for an hour every day. But then a few weeks go by, and that desire that you originally had, it begins to taper off a little bit, and maybe even gets to that point where that goal is aversive to you. But then, fast forward a few months, and the trip is coming up. It's right around the corner. And so you're inspired. Okay, I'm got to learn Spanish again. It's just a few weeks away. Let me get going. Let's go. And so goals fluctuate over their timeline. And the interesting thing about aversion is there are certain characteristics a task or a goal can have that make it feel ugly to us. And those are whether a task is boring, whether it's frustrating, whether it is unpleasant, whether it is unstructured, whether it's far away in the future. So the further away a goal is, the less we feel compelled to do it. And the final one is when something's meaningless, when something doesn't feel connected with who we are on that deep fundamental human level, which is our values. And so these characteristics of aversion, they tend to rear their ugly head when desire tapers off, especially at the start of a goal. We too often rely too much on desire to achieve our goals because desire fades, right? Excitement fades with a goal. And so we need to, when we set a goal, we can't just look at that excitement at the beginning. It's not enough. We can't just rely on the willpower of wanting to achieve it. That won't be enough because the time will come when we don't have that willpower, when we don't have the energy to expend, and when we just don't want to do it anymore because the conditions of our life aren't right. We need to accommodate for both desire, right? Increasing it where we can, surrounding ourselves with people who are conducive to achieving a goal, right? If we have a running goal, joining a running club for an example, but taming aversion is critical too. So if you find yourself procrastinating on a goal, that's a sign that it's aversive, right? Those 6 triggers of aversion, they lead us to procrastination. I remember talking to one procrastination researcher in writing this book, and something that he said to me put me totally at ease. He said, everybody procrastinates. Procrastination is human. Studies show that 15 to 20% of adults chronically procrastinate, and about a third of students admit to procrastinating chronically as well. Another study surveyed a huge population of people and found that 99% of them openly admitted to procrastinating on their goals. And in my opinion, that 1% is lying through their teeth. This is a human, visceral reaction to something that we just don't want to do that trigger the 6 attributes of aversion. And there's nothing wrong with you if you do it. But one tactic that can help immediately, if this is something that you fall into, is to shrink your resistance to something. So let's say you're putting off a meditation practice. So you might think, do I want to meditate for 45 minutes today? No. Okay, what about 30? Okay, what about 20? Nope, still no. What about 15? No. What about 10? Yeah, I could do 10. And so you do it for 10. And what you find with resistance to doing things is the resistance that we have is almost always stacked at the beginning of the task, right? It takes a little bit of time to jump into the cold pool, but once we're in there, we warm up very quickly. And our work, our tasks are the exact same way. And procrastination on a psychological level is when our intentions fall apart, right? We kick our intention down the street too. We'll just deal with it another day. But we can untangle this phenomenon of procrastination by using why we procrastinate in the first place, which is those triggers of aversion. So if something's boring, for example, can you make a game out of it? Right? Have some fun with it. If something's frustrating, can you do it over a fancy latte or a beverage of choice? If something is far away in the future, can you set milestone goals? Can you bring in an accountability partner so you have that immediate accountability right in the moment, tomorrow, perhaps not 6 months down the line when you're going to have to run the marathon or actually speak Spanish because you're in Spain. So accounting for these triggers is entirely possible to do. One of my favorite ways to deal with as many triggers as you possibly can at one time is what I think of as aversion journaling. And so here's how it works. You give yourself a choice to either do the thing that you want to put off or journal about it. That's it. You get the choice between door A or door B. And so you're going to want to journal at the start of wanting to put something off. You're going to write about how ugly it is, why you don't want to do it, and really untangle a lot of knots with regard to a task. So setting a goal is not enough. We need to learn how to edit and improve and change them along that timeline of goal attainment. A big sign that you should be editing a goal is you're not doing it anymore, right? So the easiest way to tell if something is a priority for you and motivating for you is you've done it already. And so if there's a goal on your list that you're not making progress on, it could probably benefit from an edit or a revision. Sometimes they're worth dropping entirely. And so this is the thing about a goal, where a goal is really just a prediction in disguise. And so we need to revise our predictions as we get more data, right? So as we get feedback from trying out the different goals that are on our plate, we can see what's working, what's not working. We can revise the process goals that are associated with a broader outcome that we're trying to achieve in our life. Often with the outcome goals that I have, like with losing body fat, like with working out more often, I've needed to try a lot of different process goals to find the one that ultimately worked out for me. And you're probably going to be the same way. You're going to try out a lot of things and they're not going to work. Nothing's going to stick. You're going to be frustrated. But that's the process of learning what a goal is about. And so at the start of a goal, you're going to be in that learning mode. And so embrace the learning mode, embrace the challenge of finding what will actually stick with making progress with a goal, and edit the goal continuously as you go forward, as you learn what will actually lead you to make more progress. So one of my favorite ways for capturing all the goals on my plate is just to make a goal inventory. So a goal inventory is just a list of every single goal that you're working towards. And it's remarkable how little we think about all the goals that we're in the middle of achieving, right? So we'll be at home and we'll be reminded of the dozen goals that we have to do around the house. We'll get to work. We'll open up our email. We'll see reminders of all the different projects that we have on our plate. And what this does is it increases the cognitive overhead of having goals. And it makes us just, it makes it so our environment is just chock full of reminders of all the things we have yet to do, of all the goals that we have yet to achieve. And so this is why I love the goal inventory so much, is it's a goal list that you review once a week, every week. I review mine every single Sunday, and all it is it lists out every single goal that you have across the different contexts of your life. So I have mine broken down by work is at the top because I have more work-related goals, and then home is at the bottom, and I review that once a week. And every week, I think, okay, what do I want to bite off when it comes to these goals this week? What do I have time for? What do I have attention for? What do I have energy for with regard to these? And what can I actually slot in the week ahead? If I have a fitness goal, can I schedule some workouts? If I have a goal to develop deeper friendships, can I arrange 2 coffee shop dates with friends this week? Whatever it might look like for you, it's a great way of bringing your goals down to that daily level. The final step is to maintain the goals that we have. So this can be a challenge. And I find this in my own life, including with things like meditation. So sometimes a new habit like meditation or something, I've been meditating for years, but I find that I go into phases in my life where meditation works so well that I stop doing it. And this is true for a lot of our goals. Sometimes they work so well that we stop doing them. We take them for granted. And so there's this critical maintenance phase when it comes to the goals that we have that we need to embrace more often. If a goal is really important for you and it isn't some project that's a once-off that, that's done, the reno is finished, on to the next thing. It's this thing that you want to actively maintain in your life, like meditation. Set a maintenance goal and add it to your goal inventory so you can review it regularly, and you'll find over time that you'll keep up with it just automatically because that weekly reflection, it won't feel like, okay, I need to figure out what I'm going to bite off with every goal this week. It feels like a pat on the back because you've done such a good job of achieving the goal, and now you're in that maintenance phase. Sometimes you do need a little bit of a course correction when you do that goal review, but you'll probably find that when you've gotten to that point of goal attainment, when you're onto that maintenance phase of a goal, it'll feel more like a pat on the back than anything else. But also, and I have to be honest here, out of all the advice that I give, this is some of the toughest advice that I find to take myself. But something that I have basically forced myself to do after achieving a goal is to celebrate the fact that I achieved it. And it could be something as simple as ordering dinner one evening or going out for dinner. Food is my core competency, at heart. It's not productivity. It's productivity plus food, let's say. But treat yourself in a way that feels like a celebration, whatever it might look like for you. Celebrate the fact that you achieved something incredible. Keep an accomplishments list. So the definition is in the name there, where an accomplishments list is a list of everything you accomplished. And you can do this across whatever timeline you like. So if I'm dragging my feet one week and I'm struggling to muster the motivation to do stuff, I'll just write an accomplishments list. What are all the results that my efforts are leading to at work, at home, regardless of the context. But you can also have one overall for the year, right? What are the big things you're achieving that you have achieved that you didn't expect to achieve, right? So everybody knows that feeling of, you achieve something during the day that you didn't plan on doing. It was something unexpected. And so you get to write it on your to-do list and then you get to cross it off. You still get the satisfaction of having done it. Accomplishments list can be like that too, where if you achieve something that you didn't expect to, put it on the list. You've earned it.
Chapter 4. Focus in the Age of Distraction.
We're living in a really distracted time right now. And not only this, but the algorithms that try to distract us are driven by artificial intelligence now. They learn a lot about us, and so that hooks us into even greater novelty. And it's really novelty that is the biggest source of distraction. In our brain, we have this idea called the novelty bias. It's a bias embedded within the logical center of our mind, our prefrontal cortex, whereby for every new and novel thing we direct our attention at, we get a hit of dopamine. And so we go to Instagram, we get a hit of dopamine. Then we check the news, then we get another hit of dopamine. Then we go to something else. We go to TikTok, we get another hit of dopamine. We check email, we get another hit of dopamine. Research that has been conducted by Gloria Mark, she's found that the median amount of time we focus on something for when we're in front of a computer is 40 seconds. That's it. That's 40 seconds. That's all we got. And when we have our phone nearby, this lowers down to 35 seconds. And so this is the rhythm of our attention. And you can see it from the moment you wake up, right? Maybe your phone wakes you up. And so you're tapping, you're swiping around, and then 40 seconds after that, maybe you check email. 40 seconds after that, maybe you go over to Instagram. 40 seconds after that, I should just check on this app over here, whatever it might be. And where multitasking comes in is, we can't actually do it. What we see as doing more than one thing at one time is really just as rapidly switching between things, which creates the illusion that we are doing more than one thing at one time. And why this matters is there is a phenomenon that research has identified as being called attention residue, where whenever we go from doing one thing to doing the next thing, we're always remembering a little bit of what we were just doing. So think about, you're in a big meeting, there's maybe something big happened in it, and you're trying to check your email after. You're going to be remembering the meeting in your head. You're going to remember the conflict. You're going to remember the brainstorming. You're going to remember whatever it is that happened in there. And attention works the same way, but on a very smaller, more granular basis throughout the day, where we're always remembering a little bit of what we were doing before, and this makes our attention less efficient. So if we had no attention residue, if we were always just cleanly going from task A to task B to task C to task A to B, that would be fine. Multitasking would work. But when attention residue is in play, that means we can't really actively be doing more than one conscious thing at one time. Now, there is an exception to this, though, which is with habits. So we can actually multitask with habits. We can walk while we chew bubble gum, while we do something that requires our full attention, like listening to an audiobook or something. But when we need to bring conscious intent to something and intervene to move things forward, multitasking just kind of makes us way less efficient and things take way longer than they ought to. And so this is the battlefield that we have for our attention these days, right? And I really firmly believe that the state of our attention is what determines the state of our lives. If our attention is overwhelmed in each moment, these moments will sum up to make us feel overwhelmed in general. Whereas if our attention is calm, if we're chill, if we don't constantly bounce around in these dopamine-fueled feedback loops, we can be with whatever it is that we're doing. We can be present with whomever it is that we're with. And this is everything with productivity, right? Productivity is being able to bring our full, deliberate time, attention, and energy to something and creating the conditions for that. So our attention is incredibly in demand. It's constantly being hijacked because of these novel sources of stimulation. And so that's the playing field that we have with regard to our attention. And so we need to create the conditions to counterbalance that. We have these kind of two modes that we go between throughout the day. There's the autopilot mode where we're just doing things in response to whatever happens in front of us. We're running on what Buddhist monks often call habit energy. So our habits are propelling us forward to doing the next thing, and then the next thing, and then the next thing. And often autopilot mode is nice. You had a long day and you're kind of tired, you're kind of wiped, and so you just want to unwind and lay on the couch and not do much of anything and just recharge and watch a couple of episodes of something. I'm a productivity expert, but I'm also fundamentally lazy. And so I can sympathize with people who are also wanting to be lazy, right? In my opinion, that's why I'm into productivity, is so I have more time to be lazy, right? So autopilot mode, it can be relaxing, it can be restful, but when we want to actually accomplish things, when we want to go a different way, when we want to move our days and our life to be in a certain direction that is different from where we are just otherwise, that is where intention comes into play. And it's very curious. Intention and attention have this interplay with one another, right? So we set an intention to accomplish something, then we need the attention to carry it through the finish line. A hyperfocus is, it's a word that sounds intense, but it's really when we bring our full, deliberate attention to something. And so we all have those moments where what we're doing consumes our full attention. We're in an engrossing conversation. We're hunkered down on something that's really important. And this, it's very similar to flow in a way, where hyperfocus leads to flow, where we're completely immersed. And then we reach that flow-like state where time seems to not even exist at all. And so hyperfocus is this process that involves 4 distinct steps. First, we choose our object of attention, which is, that reflection. What is the most productive thing that I could be doing now? What's the most meaningful thing I could be doing now? Then we eliminate distractions. So we think, what can get in the way of my intention, right? Productivity is all about intention. So we need to protect the intentions that we set, fortify the intentions that we set to eliminate the distractions that might be coming at us while we engage with them. Step 3 is noticing when your mind wanders. And so it's almost meditative in a way. So when you meditate, you focus on your breath, and then your mind will constantly wander to more engaging things, more interesting things, more novel things than the breath. And work can be meditative in that same way, where we have the intention that we want to accomplish. We eliminated the external distractions, but then we still have the stuff in our head that's going to come at us. Oh, I need to follow up with this person. Or, oh, what if I did this instead later today? Write those down, make a distractions list where you jot them down, whatever it takes to get these things out of your head so you can work on what you're doing with confidence. And then finally, when your mind does wander, when you do veer off not only what you're focusing on, but also what your intention was in the first place, bring it back, just gently, right? We all veer off intention. This is a part of the process of being human. We get derailed, we get distracted, but bring your attention back to focus on what's important until it's done. A big part of bringing more attention to whatever it is that our intention is to accomplish is designing an environment, both external to us and internal to us. So a calm mind, for example, that is conducive and supportive of the intentions that we set. And so for the external environment that we have, what are the distractions that are likely going to come up as you're engaged with the thing that you're doing? So, for example, Is your phone going to go off every 40 seconds or something? Are people going to come up to you in the office and ask if you have a moment to chat? Things like that. So, not every distraction that we face can be dealt with ahead of time, but many of them can, and we need to deal with those that we can. And modifying our environment is a big part of that. One of the awkward things with working with a team is that we all have two types of work that we do. We have the focused work that we do, and we have the collaborative work that we do. So the focused work that we do is, an extreme example of this is a novelist in the woods, right? A novelist can go off into the wilderness and write their book for weeks on end, not talking to a single soul. And they do work that is very, very individualistic, very non-collaborative. But then you got this person. You got this person over here who is hyper-collaborative, is what the research calls it. Think of a NASA engineer who is launching a new shuttle into the heavens. Their work is going to be super collaborative. Think of the control room, right? Everybody's interrupting each other constantly. That is the process of doing work that's collaborative. But between those extremes, between the novelist in the woods and the NASA engineer, we're somewhere in between here. Some of us are more individual. Maybe you're a computer programmer. Other people are more on the extreme collaborative side. Maybe you're a people manager or an administrative assistant, whatever it might look like. So realize where you are and where your team is between those two extremes, between the focused extreme and the collaborative extreme, and calibrate accordingly. If you're more on the focused end, maybe having outward signals that you're more focused can be very helpful. If you're more on the collaborative end and collaboration is your default, maybe have that open door policy at the office for most of the time, but have that signal that when the door is closed or when, a flag is up or something, then you're focused. And so calibrate for how focused versus collaborative your role is and work within those boundaries to understand how to protect your focus, but also protect your wandering time. So the more that intentionality matters, the more that strategy matters, the more deliberate you can become about the direction of your work, the more you need to wander. And I think, especially as things advance with artificial intelligence, where we're guiding not only ourselves, our own intentions, we're guiding the intentions of machines and agents now. Intention has never been more important, but also stepping back to have a strategy behind that intention has never been more important. And one of the best ways to do that is to wander. You think about intention more often, you plan for the future more often too. Scatter focus is when we let our mind deliberately wander. And so, I don't know if you can think back to when your best, most brilliant ideas have struck you. What were you doing when they did? Maybe you're taking a shower, and then out of the mist, your mind had a chance to connect a bunch of the constellations of ideas that were swirling around inside of it, right? We're going on a walk, and we connect ideas in that context too. It's when we let our mind wander, and we create the conditions where our mind can wander when we're doing something habitual. Maybe it's going for a shower, maybe it's going on a walk. That's what leads to the conditions that lead to more creativity. So when our mind wanders, we wander to three main places: the past, the present, and the future. So we think about the past around 12% of the time. And a lot of this time we're recalling ideas, we're thinking about memories from them. Sometimes we're recalling those cringeworthy things that we said that, is uncomfortable, but that happens less than we might think. 28% of the time, we're thinking about the present. So this is when you're typing up an email and you can't figure out the perfect way to phrase it. And so you walk across the apartment or your house to get a cup of coffee or something. And on the way there, it hits you. That's how you should answer the email. And you run back, you type it up, you hit send, and you forget about the cup of coffee in the first place. But the beautiful thing about scatter focus is we wander to think about the future more than the past and the present combined. So 48% of the time that our mind is wandering, we're thinking about the future. So this is when you're taking that shower, you're going for that walk, and on the way there, your mind has a chance to connect a bunch of these ideas. And these numbers don't add up to 100 is because the rest of the time our mind it's dull, it's blank, or it's focusing on ideas that aren't rooted in time. But because we actually get this chance to wander, we don't have to force ourselves to focus on anything, which lets us recharge. We have more energy for later on. So we get the recharging benefits, we get the planning benefits, so we actually become more intentional when we enter into scatter focus mode. So there is a key when it comes to the breaks that we take. And there are multiple ways that we can take a break with the work that we do, but the key is to do something that is effortless for yourself, right? Do something that is habitual, in other words. So something that doesn't require constant conscious intervention, but something that it roots you down into doing something that is habitual so you can actually let your mind wander at the same time. So all day we're trying to regulate our attention, focus on this, hunker down on this problem, deal with this situation, put out that fire, deal with that emergency. And all of this fills our mind with a lot of noise. All this is a lot of activity that can get in the way of thinking clearly and focusing clearly and actually recharging with what we're doing. So the research shows that there are different types of mind wandering that we can do. We can wander around a problem, for example. So you're dealing with an issue at work, and so you go on a walk with a notepad and you write down thoughts that occur to you around that idea. But one of the most productive ways that we can let our mind wander is habitual scatter focus, where we do something habitual that we love, whether that's going for a walk, going for a run, doing a workout, just doing a stretch, whatever it might look like. Those are all exercise examples, I realize. But whatever it might look like, maybe taking an extra long shower, for example, and just letting your mind roam free, something habitual that you love is the key to a restful break. So the interesting thing that happens in our mind when we're scattering our attention is we're processing and connecting all of the previous information we've consumed during that time. So when our mind is wandering, we connect experiences with memories, with knowledge, with facts, with news, with books we've read, with all automatically in our mind. We connect the various issues and problems and information and data and all together in our head. And so it's so critical to become more deliberate about the information we consume in the first place. So the dots that you're pouring into your head, the information that you consume throughout the day, it really matters, right? What is the quality of that information? So I try to pour more books into my head than I do random news articles, for example, because I find that when I reflect, I'll be thinking about ideas. I'll be thinking about deeper issues. I'll be making connections between that information too, instead of being concerned. And this is not an argument for burying your head in the sand or anything like that. There are ways to stay informed that are essentially a higher quality information based, but it's so critical. Look at the information that you consume. What's the quality of that information, and what is that leading you to in terms of your thoughts and the ideas that you're generating? One of my favorite stats, and I know stats are not motivating in and of themselves, but one of my favorite stats that motivates me to scatter focus more is that we think about our future goals 14 times as often when our mind is wandering versus when we're focused on something. It's remarkable. So when we take that step back, we automatically choose where we're going to take that step forward. So we get the rest, we get the future planning, and we get the ideas that rise to the surface of our mind because we bounce from thinking about the past to thinking about a problem that we're going to face later on in the day in the future to a situation that we're facing in the present, we connect all three destinations and we unearth ideas we would never have arrived at otherwise.
Want to support the channel? Join the Big Think members community where you get access to videos early, ad-free.